when we are on a spiritual path, it is quite easy to be overwhelmed by the state of the world and the state of humans. And this is what we're going to talk about today. It's like how to deal with this, because most people see on a spiritual path or in spiritual work, they have a tendency to withdraw, right? And there are many reasons for that, but none of them are valid. So we are to kind of, pick them apart and also try to figure out how can we be more present in the world and actually make a difference. Because with the title of this episode, it's like, this is how many people feel, right? You look at the world and say, I don't want to be part of this anymore, right? The first thing that happens, once you start activating the journey of awakening, you start seeing everything that is not awake. You start seeing the human ways. You start seeing everything being destructive and dark, and you also connect with all the potentials. You can say, oh, if only that, I can see that could have been so great if only. And then you actually amplify your own suffering. This is very common. Most go through a phase where they can see all of this going on in the world. It's like, what's going on? Why are we doing this? And they feel overwhelmed. And then, again, you produce more suffering. You just have to keep expanding until you get past that field. Because the way we deal with it as humans, when we're in that, the beginning stages, and we can see everything that's wrong with ourselves and the world, who's just like want to give up, we stop caring, right? We just withdraw. And many people do this also with spiritual work, right? They just let the world move on without them, and they can sit in meditation and create this bubble where everything is nice and they don't care. But that's not how to do it. That's not how to be an aware, even human being. We have to care. But we have to go past our own suffering, because the maximum amount of suffering you will ever have is in that phase where you can see everything and yet you can't do anything about it. And you don't want to be part of it because it's not me anymore. So it's draining. And I know many of you are drained. It's like, what's the point in doing anything? What's the point in trying to achieve anything? Because I know I'm just doing it from the wrong place anyway and will not be received. What's the point in even voting? What's the point in trying to make the world a better place? Because the world obviously doesn't want it. And yet we have to. But we need to move past our own suffering because it's getting in the way. And what we need to then remind ourselves of is that we're all on different levels of consciousness. We're on different paths. We have different things we need to do, even different levels of evolution. And that will be expressed through the actions and manifestations of others. And when people do things that are utterly destructive, it's because that is where they are. And one thing we learn as we move closer to the process of awakening, as we realize, oh, this is not real. This is a projection. This is a laboratory. This is where we, do our studies and where we try to explore things. These are renderings, but it's actually not important in itself. So we get it. That, right, okay, everybody has the right to manifest whatever and express whatever. And they will gravitate towards those who need to be in the receiving end. And vice versa, so it's all okay. But it takes a while to get there. But we need to remind ourselves that we're not here to make everything look nice. We're not here for the surface. We're here to dig into our own karma, our own resistance, and get it confronted. So first we injure ourselves and the world, and then we heal it. And through that process we learn and we extend our awareness. And what's also confusing, I think, is that once you start waking up, you realize, oh, there's no such thing as right or wrong. Because it depends on your point of view and where you are, and you move into this state of relativism where, from being able to understand that this is right and this is wrong, it's not relevant anymore. And then you wonder, why? Like, what am I to do? What's the guidelines here? Can I even do anything? Right? So we enter this state of confusion. But there is a next step. And it's happening once you begin to observe what actually works. Because when we rely on right and wrong, it's based on the collective having tried to figure out what works better. And then everybody agrees on that rule, or they turn it into God has ordered us to this or that. But it's not real. It's based on experiences that were had. It does not mean that those rules can be applied to where you are or other people are in their process. But it takes a certain level of expansion before you can see it. And then you move to the next level of right and wrong. Is it either it grows and expands, or it actually blocks. But what that can be will change based on the individual, based on the situation. But there's nothing right or wrong about it. It's basically, does it actually work? Will that individual heal or grow? Or will that particular thing block it? And then you get interested in that. And it demolishes all traditional morals and ethics, because you realize that there are so many different levels of consciousness, so many different paths, that the only way to be sure is by observing it. And you can't do that in a low level of consciousness. So you have to keep expanding until you can get past that confusion. And most of you will be operating in that kind of state of confusion where it's not clear yet. But you've also seen through many of the illusions of the world, and you don't want to be part of it anymore. What we need to understand about human caring, the concept of caring, horizontally or in the human mind, it really has to do with you getting what you want. When you care about something, just think about it. It's about you projecting how you want things to be. It's like when you care about someone, somehow we think that gives you the right to tell them what to do, right? Or order them or intervene, because that is caring. It's trying to change the world in your own image. But that is not caring. That's dominance. So in the human mind, caring and dominance are very closely connected. And what happens when you go into spiritual caring is that it's very different. But it's the same thing. It's like when we realize I can't do the caring thing anymore, we stop. And with it, I can't do anything, I should just let everyone be. Because that's obviously detachment, right? It can be difficult to both negotiate this in yourself and navigate, but it's actually simpler than we think. It's just important that you don't let yourself be consumed by your own fatigue, right? Because where the world is now, it needs you. It needs every single individual in a process of awakening to actually do something and to be present, not to pull out. Now, when we look at spiritual caring, it starts with listening, because you realize it's not about you. Care is attention. It's giving your time, giving your presence, giving your attention with the goal of uplifting, with the goal of promoting healing and growth, but without trying to dominate. And it's very simple. And I think many people in spiritual work, they forget this. Meditating does not make you a better person necessarily. Filling your heart with love does not necessarily affect other people. What matters to them is how you treat them. It's what you actively do. They can only relate to the result of your spiritual work. How does that translate into your actions? And I get it that many people feel they don't want to take part in it, so we come across as arrogant and self-centered, right? And that we only care about ourselves and we basically just full of it. It's not a good way to try to make people interested in spiritual work. When you look at the whole, general field of spirituality, it looks quite self-centered. And I get it. It's because it is. And because people don't want all of the other things. And it's the beginning of that process where you then decide, I will not be doing this, but we also have to figure out what to do instead. So, a simple way of showing it is try to improve everything always. That is very simple. Right? I like the Japanese way. I find that very charming. For instance, in Europe, when people go to like football matches and sport events, they just litter all over, and you have like hooligans committing violence and crime and beating up people and lighting things on fire. In Japan, when they go to a sports event, when it's done, they clean up. They, do not just take away their own garbage and litter. They tidy up the place. So Japanese football fans, they have this shocking effect on people because when Japanese football fans go abroad, they will clean up the stadium, right? They will do their little part in showing respect and making the world a better place. And it's that. We can all do something practical to make the world a better place. We can all show the result of our love and our respect. And it has to translate, right? It should mean that we should be treating people better. We should be able to deal with situations better. We should be able to, solve problems and be there and basically show the way through our own behavior. Because it's needed. But it's not very difficult. But I think we need to clean up our act, in modern spirituality and start kind of caring about the world around us and taking part. And it's interesting, when it comes to politics, for instance, politics are definitely very horizontal. It's about fighting for whatever you believe and whatever you think, and you try to dominate by then forcing other people to live by that, because of course you know how the world should be working. It's all of that. But we can still be part of our communities. We can still try also through politics to make a positive change. But what we learn when we are in spiritual work is that we are not too engaged in whatever point we are in. We're interested in the process. So we will be more interested in how to facilitate the growth of everyone than deciding for everyone how it should be. You can bring in a different perspective, because sometimes what will bring the most growth will not be what people want. You will look at things differently, therefore you will also see different solutions. Your goal will be to uplift, to promote true growth and true healing. And you will also understand that people have to go through their karma. They have chosen their path, and they're absolutely responsible for that. So you will try to keep that in mind too. But you can still be active, right? You can still be part of political processes if that's your thing. Don't pull back, right? Even, for instance, if you're politically active, maybe you can also have uplifting conversations with people in that movement. Maybe you can change how they look at things. Instead of seeing that everything is wrong and how terrible everything is, maybe you can turn that around and help people see all the possibilities and opportunities. Now we can create a better world. That's just fighting against whatever we think is wrong. Yes?
There we go. I'm here. Hi guys. Welcome to IKYA Live. We had a comment already that this episode tonight is so core. And I experienced this desire to pull back and let the world go to the dogs, as current world leaders seem to drive it towards. And I wanted to add the question, like, it can be so frustrating when at least the visible leaders in our world, the vast majority of them seem to be total idiots a lot of the time. And our genetics clearly chooses leaders that, I don't even know how to say it, but we choose leaders that clearly we think are going to accomplish something else than maybe what we really want. Why the confusion when we get to choose our leaders in any, be it democracy or kind of that we allow autocracy to happen? Why is there such a disconnect between the leaders we choose and then the results that we'd prefer to get?
There is no disconnect, really. It's just that people have never been interested in reality. Reality and truth is not part of the human brain. It's whatever helps you survive. Remember that humans have lived in small tribes in the middle of somewhere, and without any science, without any real understanding about how anything works. So you just make everything up. It's all guesswork. And then you survive, right? The people who are better at guessing, they win. So it's never been about objective truth. So the human brain does not care about reality or truth. This is why people prefer their fantasies over science when it comes down to it, right? Religious people or other people may be confronted with absolute, irrefutable facts and evidence that, no, this is my truth. These are my beliefs. So we make our decisions based on emotions and feelings, and we sprinkle mental kind of justifications on top of them. So we first make up our mind and our emotions about what reality is and how we think it should work, and then we make the decisions based on that. And this is why people think they're saying they want something, but based on a world that does not exist and a reality that doesn't work the way they think it does, and then they try to navigate based on having absolutely no interest in truth or reality. And then we get those results because it's all just guesswork. This is why, for instance, one chooses politicians based on the fantasies they present, like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And people believe them every time, over and over, because we prefer fantasies over reality. Because reality is boring and we don't want it. So we want someone who can sell us the idea of moving into a fantasy without having any idea how to do it, right? Because that's how we want to live. We want to live in a world with no consequences, where we really don't have to do anything. So when someone says, we're going to do this, and they can't explain why, then people will vote for them. If someone explains them the reality of things and how things work, people will not vote for them. So, humans are thereby completely corrupt when it comes to their sense of reality. And also, it's just, how they can survive, what's good for them based on their own fantasies. So, of course, we get the leaders we get. Of course, they are completely corrupt because humans are. But the thing is, as we are in the process of awakening, we should not really be reacting to that because we should already know that this is how the world works. Remember that, as I've said many times, whenever we react to something, we become the same consciousness. Because a reaction means that we are then accepting the premise, and then we go into some kind of aggressive response or reaction, meaning that we are lowering our own consciousness and we're becoming the very thing we are reacting to. So when we react to what's happening in the world, we become part of the problem. Because we do not represent anything else. We become part of the conflict. Right? So we are lowering our own consciousness. And I know this is very difficult for most of you to grow out of, because humans love their reactions. Right? It's basically what makes you tick. The human brain is basically just a network of reactions. So not reacting is difficult. And you know, often when we react to things happening in the world, it's because it does not comply with our fantasies. Right? When things happen, that's reality. But how it should have been, right? That's a fantasy. And we are invested in the fantasy of how things should be. Spiritually, we get to understand that there is no alternative to reality. What actually happens will be the combination of everything present. Right? The level of consciousness, level of evolution, different individual, different processes, the planet, you know, all of that. And then this happens. And when it happens, there is no alternative. So there's no point in reacting to it, thinking it should be different. It's not possible. And this is, again, part of how you can notice in yourself if you're moving into higher consciousness, is that you will not have those kind of reactions anymore. You can look at it and say, like, good for them. You know, they are exploring their karma and they have the right to express themselves in whatever way is necessary. And understand that whatever humans are going through and who's doing what to whom, it's all agreed before entering this lifetime. This is a big, you know, cosplay event. And everybody's in on it. Right? So we have our part to play based on our karma and then what we represent as a result of that karma. And we're just exchanging with others and we're trying to figure out how to grow and how to heal, often by trying to kill each other constantly and then killing everything else. But it's part of how we grow. As first we have to inflict pain and injury, and then we have to try to figure out how to heal it. That's how we can find balance. So humans are not a very advanced life form when it comes to this, and they have to go through whatever they need to. As you begin to lift your consciousness, you connect with love, meaning that you will also have more patience with this because you can see it. And it's just like a parent. You know, kids have to go through whatever they need to go through. They need to fall. They need to, you know, sometimes like cut themselves, do this or that, to figure out how the world works and to get, you know, better life skills. So, you know, okay, it's sad when it happens. You know, if you have to take them to the emergency room, especially if you've got boys, you know, it's like, it's just part of life. And, you know, there's no way around it. So you can both be there, but you also kind of know it's just how things work and it's necessary. Mm-hmm.
But this exact point that you're talking about, you come to it in several of your teachings, and I know I can speak personally that this point is a really tough one for me, because the more I can see of how things work, and it's like I know I have a part to play, and yet it's so difficult sometimes to know when to, you know, when should I enter that space or the interaction? When should I play a part? When shouldn't I? And also, like, there's this, kind of when we're still in this human form and at this level of consciousness, there's still this frustration at knowing that if I join in, I'm gonna bring that level in, and I'll also be part of the mess. Like, again, how do we make those finer assessments, I guess, is maybe the question I'm wondering.
Well, it's not really finer assessments. It's basically, lift your consciousness first, because it's not when to interact, it's from where. Because unless you lift your consciousness, you're just part of the problem. And you can join in, but it doesn't change anything. If you want to be part of change, you first need to have gone through the change yourself, and you need to represent it. Otherwise, you will be just part of the same, pot of misery and then pointing to how it should have been. That does not help anyone. How we work when we care spiritually. So it starts with listening. And listening means going past you. And it's like connecting with what is actually there. And it's just listen, and you move into the state of listening. It's not just with your ears, it's with everything. And just trying to understand, what is this? Where is it coming from? What is needed for this to either resolve or to grow? And you kind of just listen until you get it. Right? Humans are so used to believing in their own opinions. But when we listen, we go past that. Because we do understand that all our opinions are biased. They're the result of where we're standing and what we can see. And I really like the term point of view. It's interesting to me that most people, the words are there, but people don't relate to what it actually means. A point of view means that you're standing somewhere, right? That's a point you're in, and that's the view. Point of view. But today we often use point of view as an opinion, right? But an opinion is the result of point of view. So you need to understand someone's point of view before you can understand their opinion, or kind of, what they're bringing and what they're seeing. And this is part of listening. You need to understand someone's point of view. Because once you relate to that, you understand exactly why they feel the way they do, why they think the way they do, why they're saying and behaving in that particular way. Because, if they were standing somewhere else, in a different point of view, they would see something else, but they're not. They're standing there. And then you know, they have to work from that point. They cannot work from a point, where they're not present. They have to work from there. And then your job is to say, okay, this is their sense of reality based on what they can see, what they can sense. How can we facilitate that? Right? Because your own opinion, personal opinions, are born from your point of view. And they're not necessarily irrelevant for someone standing somewhere else. We have this weird belief that we're all standing in the same point. Therefore, we should think and feel the same, right? And we're so far away from that. We're all unique, and we're all standing in different places and have different understandings and values. And we need to understand that before we can even convey something in a productive way. If not, we're just trying to dominate. Then we're part of that horizontal, evolutionary power game, like might is right. So we're trying to convince, because when we convince, we are then projecting our sense of the world, which means that we are winning. Because again, it's the guesswork, and then it's like, who's got the better guesses? So then we're just doing that. And it's not very productive. And back to when we begin the process of spiritual awakening, we start seeing through all of this, but we don't know what to do instead. And also, we haven't lifted our consciousness enough to really be offering anything different, right? So we all need to work hard, especially now with the state of the planet in our civilization, to lift our consciousness for real. So we need to have, rigorous spiritual practices. We cannot let ourselves be kind of part of the confusion, part of the narratives. We can't let ourselves react, because then you will react more and more. And so many people today, they have a lot of anxiety and depression and fear because their brain is a network of reactions. And there are so many things to react to, and most of them are terrible, right? That's where we're being fed through media and social media. And that can destroy us, right? You cannot allow yourself to be part of that. You need to connect. But this is also part of the problem in a way. Like, as a person, when you see this and you say, I can't, and you begin, in the first kind of stages of spiritual work, right? You begin to connect to you. You begin to connect to what is authentic in you. You can kind of feel it. And then from that moment on, you will start seeing the imprints that the world has projected onto you. You will have a lot of structures. You will have a lot of things that, this is not me, right? So the first kind of drop, what we call the vertical consciousness, which is the spiritual one, you will feel like, this is not me. And you can see the imprints, you can see what you've copied, and you can see, this is painful. It's like wearing someone else's clothes in the wrong size. And then you start blaming the world, right? You feel like the world has done this to me. So you will go through a phase where you play the victim, because you can clearly see that I've been projected upon. This is not me. This, not realizing that, well, it's because you are not you. You had no idea what you are. So of course you were copying from other people. You didn't have your own expression, like your own clothes, so you have to lend clothes, right? It's that. But in the beginning, you just realize, this is not me. This is not my world. And many of you can then feel that I'm on the wrong planet, because it feels like you are, because you're connecting to something that is uniquely you. And it takes a long time to kind of detoxify all of that. But when we believe in the victimization story, we're still locked to the lower horizontal consciousness, right? So letting go, forgiving, and understanding that this is your journey, this is all you. This is all because you are not being authentic. It's because you are not awake. Then the world has to fill in the gaps. So when you are now beginning the journey of awakening, you can let go of all of that which is not you. But you have to be grateful. Instead of playing the victim, you have to be grateful for the world taking care of you. The world filling your gaps and, giving you clothes that you can borrow until you get your own, right? So over time you get it. And you're saying, oh, this is absolutely necessary. It was necessary, but now I can set myself free. So then you have to do that. But we can only truly expand if we heal, right? And healing means that we take responsibility and we begin to understand what's actually going on. For many of you, you're kind of in that. You understand it intellectually, but you behave as if the world has treated you terribly, because why else would you want to run away from it? Why else would you feel the way you do? The world is not stopping you from being you. You're basically just turning the game around. You are not being you authentically, so the world has to fill in the gaps. And then you project onto the world saying, this is the reason why I'm not able to be myself. Spiritual awakening, at its core, is how much responsibility you're able and willing to take for everything all the time. And when you're not willing to take that responsibility, and when you're not actively living it, you're operating in a low level of consciousness. Right? So practicing absolute responsibility and absolute gratitude, these are both important practices to kind of raise your consciousness for real. So to kind of move through this in-between phase, you need to be extremely disciplined. You need to be confronting yourself every day and kind of see through the bullshit. Not in the world, but in yourself.
Yes, we have a question in the audience.
Yeah, this is closely related to what Andy asked about just now. And let's say I'm going to take action, and I've meditated, I've really tried to get to a higher level of consciousness, and I've reached that, and then I'm going to take action.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge there is that whenever I'm doing something, it kind of cuts me off from that higher consciousness. So my question is, can I do both? And is it possible? And how?
It's an interesting question because I'm sure everyone's experienced this. What is happening? Like the reason why you kind of lose your consciousness is because you believe that whatever you're doing is important for your survival, meaning that it's self-serving. You want something to happen. To be in a higher level of consciousness is all about co-creation, right? Often when we want certain things to happen, we try to project, we try to take control, and I want this to happen. That's not co-creation, right? It's survival through domination. It's aggression. And then we'll lower our consciousness. There's nothing wrong with it, right? But then it means we operate as the human animal. Because when we first meditate and we're in this more open state, we need to understand that it's not about you anymore. It's about what life wants and what you're offering. Saying that, okay, I can do this. This is what I'm projecting. This is my idea. This is my vision. This is what I'm bringing to the table. What does life want? And then basically anticipate the co-creation, not you reaching your goal. Because all unfoldment stands still. Just like a flower does not travel, it unfolds. So we have to then go out of the linear way of thinking. I'm going from A to B. Understanding, no, in co-creation, it's happening, right? And it's non-linear. So it's basically, in a way, setting a goal and then letting go of it. And say, this is what I'm bringing in. And through that focus, create gravity. Because how nature operates is through expressions of consciousness and karma of everyone. That's what manifests. So if you want to create something, you first establish a clear kind of goal and what kind of you want, and then you have to take away your own want. So it's this, and you can place it in nature. And then once you've established kind of a strong focus and you have a very strong definition, this is what I'm placing in, and then you have to let go. And if that, what you've offered is strong enough, if it is actually compatible with reality, then it will have a gravitational pull. And then life will start channeling things through that point. Because resources will always be channeled through the strongest point of gravitation. But often what people do, they create this kind of ball of ideas or goals and they keep holding it. Nature cannot work with that. People are really good at achieving goals. Intuitively, they figure out how to do it. It's like they place it and then they let go. And then they observe it happening. Right? So it's this energy of anticipation and understanding that this is co-creation. When people want to achieve big goals, they know it's not me. I can hold that focus, but it's when everybody else, comes to the table. And nature trying to work with us, but it's only possible if it's compatible. And often the problem when people set goals is that it comes from fantasy, right? We don't like our lives, so we create a goal with no connection to reality whatsoever, right? So we have this fantasy, and then we try to make that a goal based on what, right? Do you have any track record? Do you have any experience? Do you have any ways for this to connect to your life? And often when people try to set goals and do kind of vision work, it's completely disconnected from realities, completely disconnected from their current life. While that is actually the greenhouse where things have to grow and where they have to kind of plant everything. So when we create something that is not connected to reality and it has no possible connection and it has to be planted in your life, where would you plant it? Right? It's basically if you live in a small apartment, you say, I'm going to buy myself an elephant. Like, what? And you live in a studio apartment. How are you going to get it up the stairs? It's that. But I love elephants. And often human goals are like that. So we need to look first at what's my reality, right? What's my playing field? Kind of what's the space I'm dealing with here? What have I done? What's already there? Think of the nutrients in that soil being everything you have done. And it has to connect. It has to somehow be a continuation because otherwise it's not part of your path. You cannot walk on this path and all of a sudden it's over there. How would you bridge that? I don't know. And this is why people don't succeed. Right? Because when you create an idea that basically has to be nurtured by someone else's reality, it will not work. So always learn to work with your life, your journey, what you have done, what's your kind of natural flow of energy and experience, and build on that. Because we can also look at our paths and well, I've done a lot of things that didn't work. But it means there is a potential, right? I've tried. So it means that there's a lot of compost here. There's a lot of attempts. So it means I can build on that. I can learn. So I can then find the right angle and the right way to manifest. Instead of just placing a goal in the vacuum, right? So back to how we lose our consciousness is then when we forget that the goal is co-creation. For anything to have any kind of spiritual purpose, it needs to gain more than you, right? More individuals than you has to benefit. And often what you see, the people in the world that are able to create enormous manifestations, it is because that idea or that product or that whatever it is becomes a grid. People can channel their own journeys through. So it becomes part of their experience too, right? If it's limited, I want this because I want this for me, nature is not interested. It has to be part of the world. And we need to learn also to then think bigger, right? And say, I can place this in the world. this can include more people, because that nature will support. And I think especially women are often too modest, right? Thinking, oh, I'm just going to try this. Men are hardwired to think big. So it's easy for a man when he has an idea, well, I'm going to place this in life and everybody's going to want, so men can more easily envision other people taking part in what they are creating. And women need to learn from that, because women often have extraordinary ideas that go nowhere because they think too small or are not good at, I would say, like systemic manifestation. But it's about thinking big, envisioning other people taking part, right? And seeing that level of co-creation, seeing that level of abundance, and that there is no limit to how much one can achieve. Women will also say, well, I will be happy if only that happens. It's like introducing a new species on the planet. Say, well, I'll be happy if there are only a few of them. You're starting with a limitation. A man would say, well, I want to dominate the planet. Let's see how many we can, get. So women also have to learn from that. And this is also back to, spiritual work and that withdrawal, right? But if it's like, if we think of it, if you look at all professions in the world, think of when you got to a certain level, you would quit, right? The moment you started realizing how to do something, you would stop. So if you have an electrician, the moment he is actually able to do it without electrocuting himself, he stops. When a baker knows how to bake for real, he stops. This is what we do in spirituality. Once we start figuring life out, we stop participating. We withdraw, right? We should run the fucking place, right? That's how we would lift the planet. But we're not, are we? We sit in the corner, and often we stop building successful lives. We stop participating. We stop caring. And we let the lower consciousness dominate. And then we victimize ourselves over it. And then, unfortunately, many people in modern spirituality, they live off of other people's money, which is not healthy, right? If you are a better farmer, you should be able to produce more vegetables, right? So in spiritual work, it means you should be able to produce abundance in your own life. If material wealth is not your thing, you should have it in other areas. And there is an interesting obsession with poverty in many different ways. Intellectual poverty, feeling sorry for yourself, in general, emotionally, all these things in modern spirituality, and it's because one is in that in-between space, right? When it's starting to see through the world, and yet one feels trapped in it. And then one becomes very self-centered because all one's own feelings and stuff, and you have to work on all your process because you need to kind of detox, right? And then you become very self-centered. There's nothing wrong with it, but also understanding this is where we are collectively in the global spiritual community. We have to detox faster. We have to get over ourselves, right? We can't just focus on our own process all the time because the world, things are happening. We should be part of it. We can't all, sit in our own space feeling sorry for ourselves and trying to deal with our difficult emotions in the past. While other people get up like 5 in the morning and go to work. We need to get our shit together, right? We need to get over ourselves and start looking at if we want to assist, we have to run the place. As I said, it's stupid. Just think of if in any profession, the moment someone actually understood what they were doing, they would quit. Right? The moment we start understanding how the world works, we withdraw. The moment we understand how emotions work, we withdraw. When we start seeing how to connect and, connect with nature, like we withdraw. It's insane. We're supposed to be the adults in the room, right? We are supposed to run the place. And I would try to, inspire all of you to be more ambitious about your place in the world. But then we have to get over ourselves. We have to put an expiry date on how much time we're going to use in our own self-healing. Because that is a space where we can stay forever. Because there's always more, right? Because there's always more karma we need to work out. And we can't decide, well, I need to work out my stuff first. You will never get done. We have to learn to do both at the same time. So we have to learn to both deal with our process and our karma and growth and healing, and also run the fucking world, right? We should be leaders. We should be successful because the world needs examples of how to be in balance, how to be in harmony, how to get things done, and how to kind of show the way. Because this planet is in deep problems. It needs adults, but all the adults are withdrawing. It's very strange. Once you can see this for real, that's kind of like, what the fuck are we doing? It's not the world, it's us. How are you actively utilizing your insight and level of consciousness and what you have learned spiritually? How are you using it to change the world? It's not enough to sit in meditation. Ooh, I'm lifting the consciousness for everyone. Good for you. But what matters to other people is how you treat them, what you teach them, who you are, your presence, and if you are someone who can actually show the way.
Yes, so on YouTube, someone brought up an example of someone who's been through maybe a process like this, but it shows how much we struggle and resist. They brought up the example of Danny Trejo, who is now a famous actor, but he was not that originally. He was more of a criminal, and he got into a lot of trouble. He went to a pretty violent and terrible prison, and there he realized that if he wanted to create good things in his life, he was going to have to do good things for others too, and he saw the need for that change. But the question that is raised here is, why is it so often that we have to do something like go to a super prison, or why do we have to grind and it's so hard to understand? Of course, he probably had a nice family and a decent upbringing and sort of a good backbone, but so many of us need to go to such extremes to end up where you're encouraging us to go. Why do we often choose that path?
Now, then we have to look at the human ape. And it's actually because of entitlement. Now, let me explain. We are hardwired to fight for survival. When we fight for survival, we're not depressed, we're not suicidal, we don't have anxiety, we know what to do as a life form. So once we live in a civilization where that is not the thing, and we can even be poor but survive, and it can still be predictable, that in itself is enough. And we often, because we then feel entitled, we don't understand genetically how to operate in a space where things work. We become destructive. Some people are able to enjoy life. Most are not. So, as I've said before, humans have objectively never had it better. But subjectively, we never had it worse. And it's because we're not equipped to deal with a good life. We're only equipped to deal with fights for survival and going to war. That's also why, again, when the country goes to war, morale is up and people, yay, Why can't we do that when there's peace? When there's peace, humans become destructive because we have to fight something. So If we don't have an outer enemy, we'll have the inner enemy. We'll start fighting each other because the enemy is obviously somewhere. So it's basically just how humans are. This is also why every civilization that humans have established gets destroyed the same way. Humans cannot deal with peace and prosperity. We can do when it's new, but over time it destroys us. So often when life is good, we have it in us that we need to feel that fight for survival. And this is also what drives many males, especially, into crime. They would have been warriors. They would have been hunters. They would have been, builders. But because today, they get close to the same energy when doing crime, when being violent. So it's just a natural part of human nature, right? Humans are just trained apes. So we should not underestimate how much kind of like animalistic psychology we have. So this is why, and it's often then when we then feel that pain and that suffering from our own self-destruction, then we can begin fighting for something, right? So where that rock bottom is, simply is when we decide that, I got something to fight for now. So if you have not got anything to fight for, it will destroy you. Not everyone, but many people have kind of this structure. So sometimes when you then feel that your life is completely destroyed, it actually feels good, because when you pull yourself together, you have aim, you have direction, you have purpose, you have something to fight for, and that is something your genes can recognize. So fighting to have a good life is often better than having it. Do we have any more questions?
No more questions at the moment.
Okay.
Do we have one in,
Now,
in the audience?
No. What is important to remember is, back to the fatigue, that in higher consciousness we learn that we have to bring not only what we want, but we are here to create. We're not here to receive. Now, it's like, as you grow spiritually, think of it like life will nurture you and take care of you as an infant. And at some point, instead of just being served, life will show you to the kitchen. And then the rules of the game changes, because when you're being served, you just have to take whatever life is giving you. Once you have access to the kitchen, you can make anything, right? You become part of what creates in the world. And then you will have access to all ingredients, and you can learn how to cook and make everything you want and anything you want. And at the same time, life, when you have started your movement in that direction, life will gradually stop serving you. And most people in a spiritual awakening process, they're still in that in between, where they want life to give them things. This is why people are so fascinated by, I will just manifest, right? I want something, life should give it to me because I'm wonderful. It's entitlement. And all of that instead of learning how to create and how to co-create. But life will then gradually serve you less and expect of you to create more, right? So growing out of that childishness, or just want, and we want to be recognized in all of that, because it's just a very childish consciousness. We move into a state where instead of wanting harmony, we bring harmony. Right? Instead of seeking love, we give love. We learn to give because we see it as giving back. But when we are in a state of reaction, as the human consciousness is we justify our own behavior and our own emotions and thoughts based on what's happening outside of us. In a state of service, which is a natural state once you wake up, when something is happening, your instinct is, how can I assist? How can I bring balance? So instead of saying, well, I'm in this state because this happened. You brought me out of balance. It's a thing where, I'm in perfect balance and I started out it was such a great day and I had meditated and everything, and then this happened, it's your fault. We do the opposite. We say whenever there is an imbalance or something, we immediately think, how can I contribute? And we begin listening. And we begin trying to figure out, how can I actively be a vehicle for nature in this situation? So we bring. Instead of reacting to something, we understand where it's coming from. We say, oh, this is not my thing. This is not my journey. This is not my expression. I have the right to be in whatever consciousness I want to be in, and all I need to do is to not react. Because when I stop reacting, I have the freedom to pretty much decide who I am, what I want to be, what I want to do, because nothing affects me. But that also means that we lose all excuses, right? But looking at whatever's going on around you and saying, well, how can I contribute? Because, finding harmony in the beginning, when we're still in this in-between space, we have discovered that we have taken on a lot from the world. Not understanding that, it's because you were not present. This is an expression of your own karma and your own resistance. So we then start looking for a subjective harmony, basically meaning that I'm in harmony with myself, and I don't need any of this to do that. You should all stay away. And that's a natural thing. You've all been there. Maybe many of you are still there. Because we need to figure out more, who am I without all of this? So then we withdraw. But what we don't realize is that it's a false harmony. Right? It's tuning our instrument without a tuning fork. So if you tune your guitar without a tuning fork, will just be finding the internal harmony between the strings, and you have no idea, And when you then try to play with others in our orchestra, you're completely out of tune, because it's a subjective space. It's a subjective harmony. What happens then is that the ego will immediately think, oh, this is harmony. Because you're in harmony with your ego. You can be in harmony with your karma, and you've pushed everything away, so you're not being triggered. And it feels good because it's you, right? And then life, well, you need to, be part of the world here. And then you immediately hear that this is out of tune. And then you believe it's the world because, I'm obviously the tuning fork here. Everyone's out of tune. So God has sent me to teach everyone. And then you go through that. So then we use our subjective sense of reality and balance, and we try to project that because it works for us, so it must be universally true. So we do that for a while. And many of you have also done that. And if you haven't done it yet, you will. And over time, when we're really trying to do that, we start realizing, maybe it's me. Maybe my sense of truth was not real. But in that phase, this is why people talk about my truth, is when you are in tune with the self, but it's still disconnected to the world and to reality. So at some point we get it. And then we understand, I need the world. Harmony is only real when I am in harmony with the world. And then the tuning process is different. Right? What we want to do is different because we start realizing, right, this is everyone. So it's not about me just being in harmony with myself. It's my ability to tune myself to everything. And that can change based on the space I'm in who I'm interacting with and their level of consciousness. So you'll, all right, I can tune myself to anything. So you'll learn that it's not a rigid position. You can learn to be in harmony with anything. You say, oh, that is harmony. It's not the state of harmony. It's the ability to understand how to be in harmony with whatever I meet. Because then I can be there. Then I can be of help. Then I can transfer something that can be of use. If I insist on vibrating something that cannot be recognized, they can't use it. So when you've learned to kind of tune yourself without losing your integrity, because it's still you, but you learn how to move into different spaces, then you get it. And you are not as self-centered, because it's more interesting to how can I utilize what I am and place it in there and place it in there? How can I be part of that process? And it's fascinating and interesting. So you move from seeing kind of the world as a kind of battleground to seeing it as a garden. I talk a lot about gardening, and there's a reason for it. Remember that as a gardener, when you have a garden, you see the beauty, right? And you're trying to facilitate the growth and also achieve balance. You want the beauty and you care, right? You care a lot. Because you look at each plant and you want them to be everything they can be. You see the potential, and it's your job to try to give every plant what they need to grow. But for the plants and for the insects and the birds, it's a war. It's an ecosystem where everybody's attacking everyone. It's a competition, and it's a fierce competition. And the birds are eating the insects and the plants, and you have fungus and you have this or that, and everybody's fighting everybody else, because this is what evolution is. It's that competition and that kind of race for dominance. That never disappears. But as a gardener, you see it. And the thing is, yeah, sure, there are insects everywhere, like birds here, plants there, and you have the weeds and all of that. And you accept, well, this is part of life. Right? You will not see a gardener say, well, I need to get rid of all the insects. You understand, it's a whole ecosystem. They will fight it out. That's what nature is. But you still see the beauty, and you still facilitate that. You still try to facilitate the potential of everyone. But you understand that nature is nature, right? The ecosystem is the ecosystem, and that will never change. But it's not like you're having a reaction to it. You accept, well, that's the garden. That's nature. Have all these levels of life. From microbes in the soil, all these insects and birds and animals and whatever, and all these different plants, and you work with it. So you are facilitating everyone. And yet, to them, it's a battleground. They're fighting. They're at war. They're trying to dominate. They're screaming and yelling. And so birds, what they're singing is mostly like, fuck you, stay away, or I will kill you. That's, oh, beautiful bird song. But birds are territorial. They're reptiles, right? So most bird singing is extremely aggressive. And it's like beautiful, right? Because we do not relate to the battleground aspect of our garden. And this is what happens when we raise our consciousness. We become a gardener. The battles, the conflicts, the wars, the domination, the destructiveness, We don't see it anymore. We see beauty. We see the potential. And we understand how to facilitate each plant, each individual, each group, each whatever it is. But we also know we all have to work out our karma. That's just the way of nature. And often what we do, the plants want to understand it. The insects don't see it. But we create a harmony in our garden. We make it so that each plant can reach their fullest potential. Because that's what you do as a gardener, and you get an enormous sense of love. And you care. You care a lot. That's why you're doing it. If you have a garden at home, you care about your plants. Not because you have to, but because it's what you do. It gives you such a great feeling, right? It gives you a sense of love, and you get the privilege of interacting with many levels of life, and you get to see all of this, and to you, it's beautiful. You don't relate to the battleground. You don't relate to the war. You don't relate to all the conflicts and everyone trying to eat each other and kill each other. So in a spiritual consciousness, when being present on this planet, it's how you see it. So you don't have a reaction to any of whatever's going on, because that belongs to nature. And this is where you should aim. This is where you need to go. Because it's only on this level you can facilitate. For everyone to be everything they can be, they need to work out their karma. They need to heal. Which means they have to go through whatever is necessary, and it's not for you to stop it. Your job is to nurture. Your job is to truly facilitate by understanding, how can I be of service to this situation? How can I let this unfold? And you can't then be in a position of bias, of still being part of the war yourself, still fighting for things that are completely irrelevant for the greater kind of movements of this planet as an organism. When you move into higher consciousness, therefore, you can be in the middle of the worst things humans could possibly imagine, and you see the beauty. Because you want to see everything unfold. And everything unfolding to you is a flower, and you see the beauty, and you see the perfection of nature. And that's what you relate to. And that's why you love everything. That's why you nurture everything. That's why you don't have opinions. Like, would you take sides with that bush over that one? That belongs to them. Their stories belong to them. It's the unfoldment, the reaching of full potential. That's their focus. And again, how people get there is none of your business. But you don't try to change them. You don't try to correct them. You don't see anything that's happening as wrong or something that should have been different. You only focus on the gardening. Right? So for all of you, I think this is where you need to aim. This is what you need to try to practice and feel that sense of calm and harmony and this kind of deep, deep love for all life and all levels and all types of interactions. And your focus is unfoldment. We have any more questions?
Actually, I just wanted to chime in that one thing I'm very grateful for personally is that your teachings often are about like a garden and that kind of thing, and I happen to have loved gardening since I was a little kid with my dad, so I really connect with that. And for me, I find it's interesting that the picture that you paint, I think occasionally I'm able to kind of be there, but it's fascinating because I can observe it and enjoy the beauty and all of that, and then it's like somebody comes out of that image, and the word that came to me as you were talking is like one of the casualties of the war comes like out in 3D at me, and let's just say it's one of my prize or one of my favorite trees or bushes in the garden who's been attacked by fungus, for example, and is struggling or dying. And it's like in that moment I lose touch with that bigger picture, because that casualty, that the pain, the suffering, also my own investment in the outcome of that situation, all of that comes to a head. And I'm wondering how specifically we can sort of pivot back into seeing the bigger picture because I think that moment of something painful coming out and kind of striking us is very common. And it's, again, either I want to jump in and become part of it and react and all of that, or I want, once it's resolved, I want to kind of pull away because it feels like, oh, I can't do anything anyway. Like, what do we do in that moment?
I talk about this a lot, and I understand that this is difficult for humans to actually get. That there is no alternative to reality. When something happens, no matter big or small, that's the journey. There is no alternative to that. So when something actually manifests, it's because that is reality. No other alternative is real. And it's just like, when a human dies, well, that's the journey. If they die, after half a minute into this lifetime, it's not like, oh, they didn't get to have a full life. That was their full life. The same if someone lives to their 120, that's their journey. The journey is what it is. Remember, consciousness will constantly move through different forms and expressions. And when we are in a form, we have a tendency to believe in that form. And you are probably identifying with your form and believe that you are a person. And when you believe in your form, you will believe in other forms. I'm saying, like how you can train yourself is looking at it like a dance. If you try to envision soul as the true individual, and each form is just like a dance step or a dance movement. So that position and that position and then that movement, all of those are different forms, different incarnations, different lifetimes. So to express oneself and to express the journey, you're dancing spiritually. And then you go that position, that movement, that position, and it becomes a beautiful dance. And each movement or position is a lifetime, is a form. And when that's done, because that's the dance, that form is no more. You're still the same. Spiritually, you are fully expressing yourself through that dance. And as soul, you do not identify with each lifetime. It's just like, I am dancing. I'm in my zone. It's like becoming a better dancer, right? And channeling yourself through all your expressions. And it's all of them together, right? So when someone's dancing, it's like, oh, that position is very nice. It's so sad I had to leave it. The focus is, I'm dancing, right? And the movements and the combinations, that is where you are at. So forms come and go. Lifetimes come and go. So when something happens and the form is over, well, that means it moved on. It doesn't mean that if I only had, well, It's like, say, if only I could intervene so you could stand in that position for longer. Sorry, I'm dancing. But the more we raise our consciousness and the more we connect to ourselves spiritually, the more we can see this dance. And we're all in it. We're all moving and going through all these dimensions and forms and expressions together. But when a form is done, it's because then it's done. Then it's served its purpose. And we go through every possible experience, every possible form, because we learn how to express ourselves fully, how to become everything that we are, right? And to be able to express in all universes, in all forms, masterfully. So again, a form is just a very small part of the dance. So see past the form, see past the manifestation, see past the lifetime and understand again, when something happens, that's the reality, that's the expression. So it's very simple, but I also respect that for humans, because humans identify a lot in general, it can be difficult to fully comprehend this.
Yes, we have a question in the audience.
So you talk about expression, and can you say something about how to recognize or finding the fine line of when I'm expressing from out of the ego and when I'm actually expressing because I am more aligned, and how to detect or be more in contact with which is which?
Yes. Now, the interesting thing here, I'm sure you have experienced this. I use the expression to be danced. When we experience to be danced, it's the moment where we cannot sense or separate ourselves from our surroundings. Right? When we can feel this is a co-creational movement. I cannot see in this expression where I end and the world begins. That's true centeredness, because your center is connected to everything else. And we can feel it when there is a kind of greater movement. Then it's not just from our karma. Often when it is, it's more of that battleground feeling that I need this because, and how should I navigate? It's the thoughts and feelings and actions are more about what you want to do on behalf of you. And there is more confusion. There is more fear because it's you against the world. When we have these moments, because for most people, there are moments where you experience this level of harmony where it's a state of absolute compatibility. And you experience being danced. And we recognize that my consciousness and me is not just me anymore. It's that, right? And those are actually the only times. The rest is trying to get there. But it's also learning from that and trying to activate and figure out, like, how did it feel? What is that state, right? And learn to perceptualize, learn to try to use your memories to tune yourself in. Because it is a very specific state. And I think most of you have experienced it in some way or another. But it is that you cannot separate yourself from the world. You are part of a greater body. And this is also how higher consciousness works. It's less you. And it's more reality. You kind of melt into the universe. So although you expand, there is less you. Because what expresses then through you is the universe. So true expansion is, in a way, you melting into the universe more and more and becoming more and more compatible, more and more in harmony with it. But that means that you let go of all control and definition. Because the moment you try that, you're not in harmony with the universe anymore. So you kind of let that take over. So it's this interesting kind of state and experience that the more you expand for real, the less you there is. But this is what we also experience in those moments, right? So it's kind of a small taster of what it is. So I think it's important to try to use those memories and try to create kind of practices from them. I think, when we're dealing with our own exploration of spirituality and ourselves and the world, is also try to kind of save what works. Because most of the things we do don't work very well. But it's recognizing when, all right, that worked, I'm onto something here. Try to kind of save that and try to kind of build a foundation based on moments and experience and positions, consciousness experience that you kind of get are in the right kind of place, right? And then over time that becomes a structure. And then we just discard the rest. So, yes, it's very simple. But, once you can feel yourself more than the world, it's because it's too much you. And often when we're in this space, the way is also you can feel the world, right? Your brain and your nervous system, it's become something that you physically can feel. You can feel the people around you, and it's seamless, right? You can sense everything around you the way you can sense yourself, and it's the same thing, right? So whenever you experience that, you're kind of on the right track.
Yes. On YouTube, someone wrote about, tuning into the gardening metaphor tonight, that there's a global movement called Save Soil that addresses trying to, promote governments and businesses and things to do things to literally save soil, because in gardening, soil's the matrix upon which everything grows. And this person wonders, are we going to start a similar campaign? So that might be one question. The other question that I find kind of interesting in addition to this is, when we think about making a positive impact in the world, what about such campaigns like awareness campaigns, hashtags, all of that? Is there anything to that actually making a difference?
I think, the last part, I think a lot of that is just vanity. It's coming from, look at me, I got the right solutions. Again, when we understand that we are where we are because that's how far we've come. And any being and every being has the right to go through whatever they need in order to grow. That's why the universes exist. And we incarnate wherever we can find the right combination of whatever it is that we need. And back to trying to change the world because we think it should be different, it never works. The world will transform when consciousness transforms. And you can't just tell people to be more aware. Then you have to also understand how to assist them in working out their karma in such a way that awareness is the result. So it's just, it's just fluff. The first part of the question was?
That was specifically the campaign is about
yes,
saving
right.
soil.
Okay, right, sure. Well, I think as a spiritual practice, I think it's healthy for humans to relate to living things, because we live in a civilization now where we relate to mostly inanimate objects. People spend too much time on their screens and don't even meet real people anymore. And, so tending to something that is alive, I think, is healthy. And there is something about, if you don't have a garden, you can have house plants. You can, see things grow, it reminds us that everything is changing, everything is growing. Some strategies work, some not. There is something about taking part in nature actively as a practice. I think that is important. I think, again, especially today, where we have chosen as a civilization, because humans are obsessed with control and predictability, right? So we try to control nature, and we've created environments where there's absolutely no nature present for this reason, because then it can be predictable, right? And if it's not 100% predictable, people lose their fucking minds and they complain and scream and yell, right? Just think when people go to the supermarket and there's something, not quite right. There's an outrage. People want absolute predictability, and everything should be repeated in the same way. It's the opposite of nature, and people are going insane because of it. We need to get used to life being alive, that change is part of it, that the ecosystem is real, that everything is part of a big organism. When you go back in time, just a few generations, people knew this, right? If you lived on a farm, you would know this. If you were a fisherman, you knew this. People related to nature, and they had a much healthier approach to life and death than we do now. So our civilization has decided to live in this artificial bubble. And it's not artificial enough, so we're now creating even more artificial and synthetic life forms and spaces, even more predictable, even more controlled, because humans are obsessed, and again, it's making everybody sick. So we need to connect with nature. I think, therefore, even having pets, plants, grow things, go out in nature, see how life works. And I think even having kids is so important to connect with life, and that is not predictable. A child is not predictable, And bringing up kids is not a predictable process, and things can happen. It's all of that, right? It's part of the spiritual journey. So we need to, because like many people also in spiritual work, they apply the same approach as we have in the civilization, that, I should do this practice and then this will work, and boom, I'm enlightened. And if it doesn't work, they want their money back, right? It's that. We don't understand anymore that everything is organic, everything is moving, there's, and it means that most are not able to connect truly to what spiritual work is. They just want to feel something, and they think that what they feel has to be truth. So they go into this ego thing again, relating to life as living, and you can't have control, but that you can facilitate. You can give of yourself is so important, right? Because co-creation is the goal. As you grow spiritually, more and more of what you are will not only be available to you, but also to the universe. Your actual consciousness is how much of what you are that has been activated and then also available. So the universe is invested in your growth, in your healing, in your awareness, much more than you could possibly understand. So the whole universe is a big garden. And each level of consciousness will kind of tend to the levels under themselves in evolution. And it's how it works. So learning to care, learning to take part is so important. As we talked about, do not pull back. I understand it. But if there's ever been a time where life needs you to step up, it's now. You cannot let your own wounds, your own process, your own karma take everything. Take all your attention. You need to give back. As I talked about, we should run the world. Where the planet is at, in many ways, it would have been better with more adults in the room. And you can also recognize, I'm sure you've had plenty of these conversations with other people on spiritual paths, talking about, one can observe how things are and how they could possibly be different, and then you do nothing, right? Then you have a cup of tea and off you go. While in the meantime, there are real people out there trying to do their best, but their consciousness isn't too low to actually make a difference, right? So it's, try to place yourself in a context of this world being a garden and a battlefield. And you can choose which version you live in. But we need to become more active. Your fatigue simply means that you need to get over yourself. If you don't want to take part in the world, it means that you identify too much with it. It means that you are still in reaction. And that is draining you. And I said, well, stop reacting. Do your practices. Have enough discipline so you can lift yourself to a level where your starting point is harmony, where you can act as an agent of life to then bring balance, to bring love, to bring real healing and bring real growth. But you can't do that for as long as you're obsessed with your own process. You have to learn to do both at the same time. And as I said, it's the way you begin. Always leave things better than how you found it. I find myself sometimes rearranging things at the supermarket. It's because one can always improve things, right? You can always clean. You can always do little things to improve. You can always uplift someone. It doesn't take much, but it's a discipline. It's caring, right? It's always trying to facilitate a little bit because it's co-creation, so it's not all up to you. And this is the typical thing I often see with people get these grandiose ideas about themselves and God chose me. Often those people do absolutely nothing. So basically they try to compensate for not having done anything ever of importance. And then all of a sudden, because the imbalance is that great that they feel they need to compensate by then being, all of that. It's better to do little things all the time because that's concrete. It is not fantasy. And it's important that when we are in spiritual work that we include the world in our spiritual disciplines. So trying to make the world a better place, piece by piece. Wherever you go, is there a little thing I can do? And when you do, we'll often feel that there is a release of energy because it shows your love, it shows your respect, and will make the world just that much better. But learn to make a difference every day, and it doesn't have to be big. But this is a very important practice because you need to be able to make small, positive changes and improvements in the world before you can make big ones. Otherwise, they come from your fantasy and you have no idea how to do it. But this constant focus on how can I improve this? How can I give here? How can I bring balance there? When you meet people in conversations, in different situations, it does not take much, but you need to get over yourself and simply always see there is always room for improvement. You can always lift. It's not difficult. So let go of your suffering. And that will happen the moment you accept that whatever happens, that's what happens. But from this moment on, I can co-create. I can then represent the changes I want to see in the world. I can set the example. We need to, demonstrate through our lives. You need to clean up your own house, right? You need to reach a state of harmony first. Because when you do, you let other people be. When you're filled with love and you are filled with your own understanding of your own life and your own journey, you see what other people need to go through and you will facilitate. You will not tell them that they're doing it wrong. You will not blame the world. You will be a gardener. And just like gardening, it's like these little things all the time, right? When you have a garden, it's not like you do everything at once. It's a daily thing. You weed a little here, you prune a little there, it's a little watering there, and, a little bit of fertilizer over there. It's a constant thing. And you need to learn to care as a constant thing about yourself, about your own life, about other people, about this planet. And understand that we are living in the most wonderful time when it comes to karmic work. But that means it's a battleground. So your job is to truly lift your consciousness, to truly connect, to truly move past that kind of middle level of confusion and self-centeredness, and move into a state where you can see clearly, where you can love clearly, and where you can navigate. Because this planet is a garden. It needs weeding. It needs gardeners who can tend to everything. And that's our job. And that's your purpose. It's why you chose to incarnate on this planet right now. But you need to grow out of the human illusion. You need to grow out of the human stories and fully embrace the beauty, fully embrace the healing, fully embrace the growth. And have that intention in your heart that you want to be, you want to bring everything to its fullest potential, including you.
Okay, everybody, we have our mission to get over ourselves and get our gardening gloves on. So thank you so much for joining us for IKYA Live tonight, world news from the spiritual perspective, and your premier news program for practical spiritual advice in your everyday life. Be sure again to share tonight's episode with fellow spiritual seekers, family, and friends so we all can make a bigger difference in the world. And follow us on social media, IKYA.official on all channels, and be sure to like and subscribe tonight. And again, thank you for being with us. We have to skip next week due to holidays here in Norway and needing to rearrange schedules. So we will be with you in 2 weeks from tonight for our next IKYA Live, and we look forward to that. And until then, we wish you to do well and have a beautiful week.